The beauty of real estate is that you can understand it. There's always going to be a sector where a profitable investment exists.
How hard was it to generate that credibility as a younger entrepreneur when candidly you're asking investors for a large sum of money? Right?
If I could successfully run a portfolio of assets for other people, it would be convincing to a potential investor to invest with me.
What were some of those strategies or tactics that you used to maybe set yourself apart from others? What are things outside of the day-to-day within your work life that allow you to stay motivated, stay concentrated? How much of that success or that momentum would you accredit to being in such like a mover type city like Miami, right? What do you think 2026 looks like for the market?
So the best thing to do would be...
It's already Wednesday. We're back with another episode of Link Live. We are still doing the Miami series. We're welcomed today by Diego Curbelo, second of the third Miami pod that we did. In this episode, there's no shortcuts. We're talking everything real estate and what sourcing great deals looks like. It's the grind heavy, behind the scenes work that nobody talks about within the real estate space. And Diego is really uncovering all of it. So we're super excited to get into this week's episode. And without further ado, Link Live, let's hop into it. We're doing a little bit of a Miami location series. And we're welcomed today by an amazing first guest here. We're with Diego Curbelo, founder, CEO of Blue Summit Capital. Super excited to get into it and kind of dive deeper into your story. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Like always, right? And whether it's rooted in family, background, sort of principles, we like to start Link Live in the show kind of earlier on in your journey, right? You're in your mid-20s now. You're obviously doing something right. But I want to get to know a little bit about your background, your upbringing, what brought you to Miami, and some of those early principles that allowed you to have some sort of sense of ambition and want success and want to be entrepreneurial and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you for having me. We spoke a little bit before the podcast, and we're obviously of similar ages, so I'm sure that you'll relate to a lot of the things that I'm about to talk about. But I was born in Venezuela, and I moved to the U.S. basically right before kindergarten, and I was raised here. And I kind of grew up in that era of the internet business guru, and I'm sure you can relate to that. I watched YouTube a lot growing up, and at that point, people like Ty Lopez and Grant Cardone kind of took over the ad space, and it was my first exposure to the fact that really anyone can do business, and business was accessible. I think before that, I perceived business to just be people in suits or something for old people. And that was the first time that I realized it was accessible to anybody and you can just go out and do it. But on the other side, I also grew up with Hispanic, maybe, sense of cynicism and let me redo that. I also grew up with this natural cynicism that might come from being Latin American, but just doubtful that anything is true. And that came a lot from my parents as well. But that was kind of my first exposure to it. But I had to pass everything through my parents and especially my dad, just saying, hey, I have this idea. Is this viable? Is this realistic? But real estate and business became prevalent to me at a young age, and the fact that was a possibility.
Right. So you have a background of your family being in business, right? Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about maybe your father and sort of how he was with you growing up and as a child, and some of those early values that maybe he instilled in you. What did he do for his business? I know you mentioned maybe it got acquired and stuff like that. So
yeah, so my parents and my entire family, mainly on my dad's side, was in the food and beverage industry,
nice.
Specifically spirits and alcohol. And it was a very hyper local brand that my dad brought to the States and other people took to Europe and slowly started building it. But from very humble beginnings. I mean, when we moved to the US, my parents were just getting by. I mean, barely, and I'm not exaggerating. I We lived in a 1-bedroom. I shared a bed with my parents for as long as I can remember because that's all that we can afford.
Where are you originally from again?
Venezuela.
Okay.
That's all that we could originally afford. And it was a very different Miami back in the day, and I grew up in the suburbs.
I was going to say getting here that early on and having seen the city kind of evolve, what are some of the things that you noticed over the past few years that have really shaped Miami into the hub that it is today?
I'll get there.
Okay.
I want to hit this point about my dad. So our house kind of looked like the War Dogs when he has all the boxes.
One of my favorite movies, actually.
In the living room or here by where the apartment is at. And but before they got that apartment, their house was full of boxes, and he was just going liquor store to liquor store, kind of peddling the product. I watched him work, and we couldn't really afford a daycare. So during the summers, I would either go to Venezuela or be with him pushing the product.
Nice.
And I just saw that hustle really early on firsthand, even though it wasn't characterized that way. I just thought that was the only way. But the best thing that my parents ever did for me, specifically my dad, is encourage me to read and learn, and give me the opportunities that they might not have had.
Right.
So he gave me a copy, and I still have this signed copy by him of Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in the 3rd grade. And candidly, I didn't read it until I was in middle school.
Yeah.
But after middle school, I got really interested in reading business books and learning more about what Robert Kiyosaki talked about in that book and specifically real estate. And he basically said, if you ever want to order a book, here's my Amazon account, and this is the only thing that you can buy at absolutely no limits. And at that point, I read every book that we all have read to get to this point. I'm sure you have as well, but that was an unbelievable opportunity, and I got to talk to him about business. But real estate was the main thing that really stuck with me because I understood it. Mm-hmm. Especially multifamily. I mean, it's something that we've all experienced. You've rented a place. I've rented a place. And throughout my entire time in middle and high school, I just wanted to buy apartments and kind of be a landlord. I didn't really know what that meant until almost 5 years ago now. But that's really all I wanted to do.
Nice. What was it about, I guess, real estate in general? I want to get more specific on the different categories and lanes between multifamily, commercial, industrial, and stuff like that. But what was it about real estate as a whole that you think attracted you early on?
Early on, like I said, it was the fact that it was understandable.
Sure.
Now, in hindsight, I look at real estate more as a different vehicle to deliver returns for investors, and that's the way that I have to treat it practically in business. But in the moment, it was just, this is an opportunity to make money in a way that I understand. Mm-hmm. Because, what are the most common options out there? Stocks, bonds, real estate, and debt.
Yep.
And the stocks, bonds, and debt are a little bit more nuanced and obscure in the mechanics that are not obvious to a kid.
Sure.
But I could understand that if you want to live in a place, you have to pay rent to live in that place. And somebody had to spend money to buy that place, and you have to pay them more rent than it cost them to pay the mortgage on. So it just made sense. I love, since I was a kid, I was driving around with my dad, going to all these different places in Miami, away from the suburbs. And I just loved looking at buildings, and I didn't understand who owns this. I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
Love that. What was the spirit? What was the liquor that your dad's business was?
Diplomatico. It's a rum.
Absolutely. I've definitely heard of that. I'm assuming, right, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad's a business owner. Worked with him, when I was in middle school all the way through college, on and off, summers, breaks, stuff like that, right? I'm sure you had some pressure to get involved in the family business potentially, or had a lot of opportunity in and around that industry. Was that there? Was that ever a thought to you?
Yeah, believe it or not really.
Okay.
I think my dad always wanted to push me to explore the things that I was more interested in. There's a lot of dynamics in the business. It's a different lifestyle that isn't really suited to me, I guess.
Sure.
And he understood that from a young age. I was interested at many points in participating, but I was always encouraged to kind of forge my own path.
Go your own route.
But the pressure to succeed was definitely there internally.
Yeah. And maybe even that much greater for you, right? If you wanted to pursue that route. Did you end up going to school after?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in Texas.
Okay.
At Baylor for a couple of years.
Nice.
And then I went to FIU here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Post-grad there, what were you doing? Did you go the 9-to-5 route? Did you start to kind of get your feet wet immediately within entrepreneurship? What was that inflection point?
Yeah, so I'm telling you, I always wanted to do real estate, but I didn't understand what that would look like.
Sure.
I thought the only path to doing real estate was being a realtor,
right,
on the sales side, I guess. And that has never interested me at all. When I go to college initially, the reason I was at Baylor is because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And I had a very similar experience to many people when they go to university. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, then I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, then I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And the system is kind of set up to make that a difficult choice to make.
Sure.
At a young point in my life. But I leave school, and by the time I'm back in Miami, I know that some way or another, I want to acquire real estate. And at that point, I understand what it means to package up a commercial property as an investment for other people, and what it means to raise capital and how to mechanically do that. But the most important thing to get into that field is to have some sort of track record. And I needed to get that. So I started working in single family property management.
Okay.
My logic was, first of all, I've always been attracted to the least sexy side of the business as possible, and property management is definitely that. And second, if I could successfully run a portfolio of assets for other people, it would be convincing to a potential investor to invest with me, because I've done it for other people in the past, and I can do it for them under my direct stewardship.
Right.
So my dad connected me with a family friend of ours who was doing property management in Orlando, and all for single family, which I was never interested in, but that's the opportunity that I had. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there I met one of my partners, and I helped grow that portfolio a lot. I was mainly on the business development side, but it was a small team. So I got to dip my feet into many parts of the industry.
Sure.
And one of my now partners was also working there on the operations side. And I wanted to come down to Miami and do my own thing on the commercial side. That was always the goal, because I wanted to buy commercial multifamily. So I said, let's go try and start our own management company. We're both from Miami. Let's go home and figure it out.
Yep.
And that's what we did 3 years ago now.
Okay. Yeah. I was just going to ask you. So Blue Summit is 3 years old as of right now. Mm-hmm. My initial question was around, because I've met with a lot of people in Chicago kind of talking about the same topic. My initial question was around how hard was it to generate that credibility as a younger entrepreneur when mm-hmm. candidly you're asking investors for a large sum of money, right?
Right.
Maybe talk to us a little bit about some of those early conversations. Obviously, relationships can only take you so far. You then get to the point where it's kind of, all right, now I got to actually prove myself here. So I think no matter what line of business you're in, you're tasked with that. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about where did you get your confidence from when starting to talk to investors, maybe double your age at the time, if mm-hmm. not more, I would assume. And what were some of those strategies or tactics that you used to maybe set yourself apart from others?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that was a concern initially, and it's a concern today, and sure. It will be a concern tomorrow, because like you said, both of the industries that I work in are built completely on a huge amount of trust. In property management, I have to convince an owner that worked very hard to acquire their asset to basically allow the rents to flow to my account and for me to make the right decisions on the leasing front and on the operations front, and then also send them the money at the end of the month.
Right.
Extremely intimate. There's not really a way that I can offer a trial period or a way to provide value unless I'm really in there. And on the acquisitions front, I have to convince someone to invest their hard-earned savings into an asset that's by nature illiquid. Trust that I'm going to make those right decisions, trust that I'm going to grow their capital, and in 5 years, I will pay them out. And from the beginning, that I selected the right asset to provide those returns in a market that since 2023 has been more complicated than I just caught it at the downside of the cycle. So the main thing that helped me early on was just to realize the limitations and to understand where people are coming from. I think when I was a lot younger, I would have taken a lot of the rejection personally. Now I'm at a point where I understand that no matter the amount of preparation or no matter the amount of research or no matter how many years I spend here, I mean, I'm young to the industry now, but I could have a 20-year track record and people still might not invest with me or people still might not want to let me manage their property. And that is not a bad thing.
Right.
It just is what it is.
100%.
Yeah.
What were you doing to get in front of some of these individuals? Were you, hyper sending mass emails and direct messages and things like that? Were you exhausting your personal network? Were you going to networking events and things of that nature within the industry? What were some of the tactics that you feel like either you tried that didn't really push the needle and maybe things that you didn't expect that you also did that actually made a difference?
I went to a lot of events. I still go to a lot of events, and we're recording this in December, planning for next year and what I want to achieve. And I do want to go to a lot more of them, specifically higher quality events. But early on, real estate is kind of a path that a lot of people touch from different fields. Sure. You have people that help property managers, you have vendors to property managers, lenders, insurance, and a lot of the people go to the same events. So I kind of was just showing up, and every time I would see someone again, we would have greater depth in conversation, and that ultimately would lead to referrals. But I never really did a massive outreach intentionally. I think that a lot of the relationships that I have formed that have been fruitful have been through depth and repeated touch. And when you're in this field, I think people start to value longevity, just toughing it out in a weird market. Most people say that, real estate historically has been a great and predictable builder of long-term wealth.
Sure.
And that's true, but I'm more in the financial services side. And the people in the financial services side in real estate are transient, because if a market is bad, it's really hard to pitch a deal that's worthy of investment unless you have a unique strategy or unique insight into what you're going for. But showing up and seeing the same people and touching base with those people and providing value where I could for free has done a lot for me, more so than a dedicated campaign.
100%. How much of that success or that momentum would you accredit to being in such a mover type city like Miami, right? People may be listening to this or watching this, or even I'm thinking, right? If I'm from, maybe a rural town in the middle of the country, or even a smaller, bigger city that may not have as much action, they may not see as much of a clear path. What would you say to those individuals that are interested in taking the steps that you did, that may not know kind of where to land, where to start when it comes to their market, because they don't feel like the resources are as prevalent?
I mean, I think we live in the best time ever to get connected, and Link Live and your own career are a great example of that. I'm sure you're connecting people across the country via the internet. Bigger Pockets, LinkedIn are great resources just to meet people in the fields that you want to work in and impact. I'm very fortunate to be in Miami, but there's pros and cons to it because there is so much action that there's a lot of crap out there. I mean, so when you're in Miami and you're trying to do business in Miami, a lot of the initial conversations that you have with people, both parties are simultaneously trying to sniff out if the other person is BSing and stuff like that. But there is unlimited opportunity here. But it's just about being diligent and getting after it. But if you're in a rural area and you want to work in real estate acquisitions or property management, I think that getting connected with the people that make that happen, like lenders, like brokers, is the only way to start. And also know your limitations. I think that I had an irrational fear of making a misstep. I think I'm very aware of the things that I say or how I'm perceived, because I think it is going to have a bigger impact than it probably ever will.
Right.
So don't let that stop you and just put yourself out there. But it's the only way.
Right. You kind of segued into this a little bit and more the social perspective when you mentioned like people in Miami may be kind of like feeling each other out. You don't know if their intentions are really true. You see a ton of what we would say fluff, I guess, on social media and the internet. And I think out of any business model or industry that like gurus or entrepreneurs, whatever you want to say, are pushing, it's anything that has to do with real estate. It could be wholesale, multifamily. You got to rent out this building and stuff like that. Like, in your opinion, like what is to set the narrative straight in your eyes? What do you think is the most popular real estate based vehicle today and going into 2026 that young or older entrepreneurs and aspiring business owners could get into? And also, it doesn't even have to be someone that wants to own a business, but like maybe someone like a novice investor like myself, right? I have one small townhome rental property at home, but maybe interested in doing more, just not there yet. Like, what is that one vehicle that you think if someone wants to get into, they can?
What do you mean?
More so like you hear a lot of misleading information on social media. Like if you were to direct someone that's like an average investor or is looking for something a bit more basic, where would you steer them?
I think exactly what you did. The services portion of real estate, whether it's investment services or management services, is not really something that I would suggest just trying to get into on a whim, even though I don't think that it's impossible.
Sure.
But I think you have to have a passion for it because it's extremely slow and it's not going to happen overnight, and not even you have to work hard for it. I mean, you didn't acquire your townhome investment overnight, but it's just something that you have to plant your roots in and be comfortable putting the seeds in and watering it every day, and you might not see it sprout for a long time. But on the personal investing side, I think that's exactly how it starts. There's people that I know that are extremely successful that have no interest in buying apartment buildings. They just like buying condominiums in all these new buildings that are popping up in Miami, seemingly overnight. They like to buy those pre-construction and maybe make a little flip. I know people that like to buy, more workforce housing, single family homes. I know people that like to buy apartments. I know people that like to buy retail. I think the beauty of real estate is that you can understand it. So the best thing to do would be to stick to what you can understand.
Absolutely. That's good advice. I think part of my question too is like the internet makes everything feel and seem more complex than it really is, right?
And simple at the same time.
Right. It's all how you interpret it, I guess, for sure. Very cool. I want to get an understanding more so of like your process at Blue Summit, what you guys do, explaining it to someone maybe that like has no idea what you do. what do the first steps look like? Is there like a minimum criteria someone has to have to come invest with you guys from start to finish? Maybe what does that life cycle look like a little bit?
Yeah, I don't want to dive into all of the legal frameworks of it, but when the first thing that we have to do is build some sort of acquisitions pipeline. Since the pandemic, most of the Sunbelt markets, which is what we target specifically in Florida, experienced a lot of new supply. Something happens in the industry where developers see an increase in demand and then everyone starts building at the same time, usually the same kind of product. In Miami and in Fort Lauderdale and all the way up to Orlando and Tampa, that product was Class A rental units and big apartment buildings with the amenities. And now, kind of since the pandemic, not only were they building those at basically zero interest due to the lending environment at the time, but also they kind of overbuilt for the demand that was actually realized. Now, a lot of those are sitting kind of vacant or half vacant, and that kind of trickles down into every sector of real estate. Because if the Class A typically leases at $3,000, but they're offering 2 months free, their effective rent is now $2,500. So everyone has to pare down. So all that to say, we have to have a pipeline of properties that are actually going to work with the lending bids that we're currently getting and with the returns that satisfy our current investor base. So it's usually just managing that pipeline, trying to reach out to owners off market, because in hot markets like South Florida, if a deal is on the market, it's probably too late. Usually brokers pass that around into a network that they have worked with before, and they might pass on it, and then they shop it out to a few more buyers that they might not have worked with, but they're familiar with. And then if everyone passes on it, it kind of ends up on the market. So we have to be diligent in building that pipeline in the off market. At the same time, once those deals kind of filter through and we get to stage 2, then we have to underwrite it and stress test the whole thing, because right now lending is a lot tighter. I mean, you don't have that huge spread that you can typically get. So we do the full process on a deal, and most of those don't meet the criteria. And the ones that do, then we have to start kind of packaging it and preparing it to bring it to investors. With investors, the way that we raise capital, by law, we can only raise from accredited investors. So the standards changed pretty recently, but pretty sure you have to have $200,000 in income or $1 million net worth, not including your home. And verifying that is a whole other process. But that's basically who we try to target and who we try to look for. And some of them might pass. So a lot of deals you can put, hundreds of cumulative hours into, and they don't go through. But that's kind of the whole process and who we work with.
Whole life cycle. What does your guys' portfolio look like right now?
Well, since we started and since we got into acquisitions, like I said, we've been in this phase of running deals and doing a lot of work, and have even been under contract several times, and the deal falls through kind of by way of things out of our control.
Right.
So for the most part, we've been kind of leaning into the fact that we're sitting on the sidelines. There's been a lot of opportunities that we get very close on, and we have to make a decision where, we can do this deal. We know it's going to be subpar and we'll make money on the front end, but this is not going to look great.
Right.
So do we pass on it or go through with it? And we've passed on it every time. And every time that happens, either something in that submarket changes or it becomes very apparent that we would not have succeeded.
Right.
And so we're grateful for that. So at the moment on the acquisitions pipeline, we have one development in Little Havana, which was a great deal. We had the land, and now we're building a 12 unit. It has parking. It's going to be great.
Awesome.
But other than that, we're just constantly nurturing that pipeline, like I said, and building better relationships with the owners here in South Florida, so that when the time comes, we're ready to go.
Amazing. You segued a little bit into my next question as well. I wanted to learn a little bit more about what those key indicators look like for different property and asset types. What are things that you're looking for as green flags for you guys wanting to maybe get involved and jump into property wise?
Yeah, that's a good question. We look at it on the macro level.
Sure.
How does this, let's say Fort Lauderdale, because that's what I've been working on this past week. How does Fort Lauderdale look as far as population growth and employment and general stability compared to the United States, and how has that looked historically? We try to go 10 years in total with 1 year future projections from CoStar, and then we validate that with other sources. But that's kind of what we do. We start comparing a market to the United States and how it has looked historically. We always have the running context of post-pandemic oversupply and how that looks, because on the surface it might look like this makes no sense at all. So we keep that in mind and model to those thresholds, and then we'll look at the sub-market specifically, so Central Fort Lauderdale or West Miramar, and just say how are rents here, which is how can we expect to perform.
Yep.
And we do a bunch of scenarios and just say compare it to the subject property. We run comps, we do all of that, and then if things start to look feasible and relative to the market, because most of the times you'll get an offering memorandum, which is a fancy PowerPoint from the broker that just says this is what you can expect to make. And candidly, we kind of just scrap everything and do it through our own research. And we come to the conclusion that, hey, this is feasible. Then we weigh that against our growth assumptions. We weigh that against our debt terms. What happens if rates go up? What happens if rates go down? And put together a full business plan. But usually it's kind of, if one bucket is filled, then it flows into the next bucket. Right. And if the other bucket is filled, and then at any point it can kind of break down, but the funnel works roughly like that.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And with these investors, what is a realistic, or what sort of expectations are you setting in terms of realistic returns and stuff like that? Does it vary? Do you give a minimum amount of duration?
Yeah, we're typically holding at least for 5 years,
okay,
which is a huge commitment for a lot of people, especially in today's day and age. I think most of the time when we're pitching, people are comparing investing in multifamily to investing in something like Bitcoin or something like that, when in reality, it's just supposed to be a small part of someone's portfolio.
Right.
It's a diversification. Maybe it's a hedge against inflation, but for the past several years, almost a decade, it's been kind of checks in the mail. That's what investing in real estate is like, when really now the strategy has shifted towards capital appreciation. So it does vary deal by deal, but we're usually looking to hold for at least 5 years.
Okay.
But we do a wholesale analysis every year anyway. Holding at least 5 years, we want to at least double their money in 5 years. And on an IRR basis, we basically scrap anything that's less than 15 to 18%.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Shifting gears a little bit, what do you think 2026 looks like for the market? I know the media loves to scare everybody. 2025 for some may have been a pretty tough year, and you have a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy and waiting for those rates to continuously drop. And obviously they haven't maybe come down as much as people would like, but do you think we're entering into some sort of recession-based market? Do you think next year is going to be the right time to buy for people? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'm cautious in calling for a recession. I don't think it's productive at all.
Right.
And also in this small to middle market sector of real estate that I'm in, the macro swings kind of are very delayed. But for the market in general, I do think that on the surface, cutting rates seems imminent or the only option. But historically, when rates have been cut, it's to allow corporations to reinvest into their company, and that has usually always meant investing in talent.
Yep.
All that to say, people can't get a job. Now you're seeing a lot of reinvestment into AI and systems like that, and the job market hasn't really improved. And fundamentally, if they cut rates, that doesn't automatically now mean that people are going to get more jobs.
Right.
And if people don't get more jobs, then that's going to affect the rents. And if that affects the rents, that affects me, and it all trickles down. So it is something that I think about a lot, especially in this quarter, how the conversation has been.
Right.
It's important to really sit with that now that everything is kind of sensationalized. Forming your own opinion quietly and objectively,
right,
is something that I want to be really conscious of doing. But it is concerning kind of how the job market and where valuations are at for homes compared to the median income have kind of landed and where we're at. But there's always going to be a sector where
right,
a profitable investment exists, but it's just harder to find, and you kind of have to be more rigorous with your criteria, if
Agreed.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. How does Diego keep himself mentally sane with everything that you have going on, right? Yeah. Highly motivated, highly ambitious, very busy individual. What are things outside of the day-to-day within your work life that allow you to stay motivated, stay concentrated?
Yeah, not to stay on the work front, but I think that I'm surrounded by partners that I deeply care for, I deeply appreciate, and I love what I do. There's nothing I'd rather be doing, and as corny as it sounds, I am indeed living the dream, even though, you know, we're sitting on the sidelines and a lot of it is admin work.
Sure.
I love what I do, and I would never change that. Not only my partners, but I'm in a great relationship. I have a wonderful relationship with my parents. I have a very small and close group of friends that all understand what I'm working on, what I want to achieve, and everything that I have going on. So I'm extremely busy, and a lot of my time is spent working, and I hate to be corny, but it never really feels like I'm working. So as long as that continues to be the case, and as long as I'm enjoying everything I do to the extent that I am, then I don't suspect that anything will ever change as far as my career and the way that I'm living my life. So that keeps me sane. I think I have a wonderful support group.
Awesome.
And I love what I do.
All about that balance, for sure. That's what I hear there. Before we wrap up in a little bit, I want to get an understanding. What are you excited about for Blue Summit in the future? What are you excited about long term, or even next year?
Yeah, I think we're at a great place. The people that we're interested in working with have seen us be able to withstand the storm, and the storm might only be getting started, but we're here to stay, and we've consistently shown that we can deliver value to the people that we work with, and the word goes around. The vision is to continue delivering value to the people that we work with, and finding those, essentially there's people that have known we're on the sidelines waiting for a good deal. So when we bring that, which might be next year, when we bring that, they'll say, oh, this is what they've been waiting for. This is a good opportunity. In the grand scheme of things, I want Blue Summit to be a company that investors enjoy working with. I spend a lot of time curating and thinking about the investor experience, regardless of the check size or regardless of the deal size that we're pursuing. I think that it's the most enjoyable part of my job. Even on the management side, anyone that requests management or engages a relationship with us for business, I try to deliver the same experience that I would for 1,000 units than I would for 11 units. And in the long run, I'd like to have as small of a team as possible that really shares the values and kind of the attitude that we have at the office currently. Everyone loves going, I'm assuming. Everyone loves going, and it definitely feels that way. And I would love to maintain that, surrounded by a group of competent and talented individuals.
Love that. Mm-hmm. We have one closing tradition on Link Live, and it's a specific question. If Diego had to go back in time and ask tell his 18-year-old self something, what would that one thing be, knowing what you know today?
Let me think about that. I think I would tell him, what are you afraid of? You don't have to have it all figured out. Most people, even the people that you look up to, are still figuring it out.
100%.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Diego, tell the camera, tell the people where they could find you, where they could get in contact with you and reach out if they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty active on LinkedIn. You can reach me at Diego Curbelo on LinkedIn, and I'd love to connect if this has brought any value to you.
Amazing. Diego, thank you so much for being on the show again. Link Live, that's a wrap.